Dude, I'm just clamoring for more prequels content because I'll be honest, the post Clone Wars Star Wars universe is pretty boring. Young, you mean like a baby Yoda? They would never do that. No, or what I was saying is the Star Wars universe post Clone Wars is really, at least from a like, I know that people don't like the prequels because they were bad and like me prequels bad, but like guys, come on, the universe of the prequels is infinitely more interesting than the universe post prequels. Like, what even is there? It's like, oh, there's the big evil empire, and there's also some rebels, and sometimes the rebels blow stuff up, and the empire goes, no, hey, don't do that. We're the big evil empire. And the rest of the time, it's just like, yeah, big evil empire, bro. And it's even worse in the sequels because it's like they literally could have done anything, and they went, uh, okay, you know the original trilogy, and then everyone else in the room was like, yeah, and you're like, and they just do it again. It's it's so uh. Also, the fact that they call it the Skywalker saga, and literally not one Skywalker is present at the end of Rise of Skywalker. At the end of Rise of Skywalker, not one Skywalker is present. And Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter, and then Palpatine comes back, and Poe goes, I don't know how, but Palpatine is back. And that's the only explanation we ever get. And then the official Star Wars account on Twitter is like, while he may look like the original Palpatine, the Palpatine you see in Rise of Skywalker is not anything about Snoke. Oh man, are you in for a treat, bro? Literally, the opening shot of Rise of Skywalker, Kylo Ren walks up to Exegol, which is this mysterious, like, underground lightning zone that Palpatine is in. Actually, do you care about spoilers? Are you gonna watch it? Nah? Okay. So the opening shot, the opening scene of episode 9, Kylo Ren walks into Exegol. He just knows how to... Oh yeah! Not actually the opening shot. The first opening shot, Kylo Ren goes to Mustafar. We have no idea that it's Mustafar because it's some random forest part of Mustafar, which makes no sense because it's a lava planet. But anyway, there's a forest on Mustafar. That's where Kylo Ren goes. We're never told that it's Mustafar. You just have to know that. And he gets a Sith Wayfinder. No one knows what that is. Apparently, it's just a map that leads to where Palpatine is because that's how it works now. So he has a Sith Wayfinder and he knows where Palpatine is. And apparently, this is also not shown in the movie. He got the Sith Wayfinder from Vader's castle on Mustafar, which we never see in the movie. And you just have to know that because that's how it works now. So he gets the Wayfinder, which is actually just a Sith holocron, but it's not because they're different and there are only 2 of them, which we learn later. And so he knows where Palpatine is now, and he plugs the Wayfinder into his ship and goes beep boop beep boop beep boop, and then he flies through a bunch of nebula instead of just going around it, and then he ends up at Exegol, which is a big lightning pool planet thing, and he walks under a giant cube, and then he's underground now. And the first thing he sees, he's like, yeah, like Palpatine in the background, just like cackling because apparently that's all he does now. And he walks past a giant tank, like Bacta tank, and what do you know? There's like 12 like Snoke bodies just in the tank. And like No, I'm not even joking, bro. There's just a bunch of Snoke like creations in the tank, and then but the first thing Palpatine says is, "I created Snoke." Like everyone's just like, "Huh?" It's actually it's dude, and that is the first of many moments in the film where the entire audience just goes, "Huh?" It's it's bad beyond what you could even think a like major studio would put out. It's hilariously bad. Okay, now here's another thing that happens. The rebels or the resistance are like, "Uh-oh. Oh yeah, so the way that they know about Palpatine is that in the opening line of the title crawl, it says, "The dead speak. Palpatine, or like once thought to be dead, the evil Emperor Palpatine is back." And he like put out a message to the galaxy that he's back. And everyone just knows now. Because Palpatine is like, "Yeah, I'm back." Like, the boys are back in town, bro. And then, so the resistance is like, "Uh-oh, Palpatine's back." And wait, I don't even know how they know about the Sith Wayfinder. Hold on. Dude, it makes no sense. But okay, so anyway, somehow the Resistance knows about the Sith Wayfinder. And part of the reason they know how, I don't even remember how it led up to this. But they're like, "We need to find him." And then Rey is like, I heard about this thing in my Jedi texts," because you know the Jedi texts that Luke burned down in the Last Jedi, and everyone was like, "How could he do this? He burned down Luke is stupid. He burned down the Jedi texts." You know those Jedi texts that got burned down? They were actually just in the drawer of the Millennium Falcon like room. They're fine. Rey has them. Um, and she's like, "Oh, I remember this thing from my Jedi." Dude, do not ask. "I remember this thing from my Jedi texts." Yeah, apparently, she kept them. But and she's like, "There's this thing called a Sith Wayfinder," which is like, why is the secret Sith Wayfinder, which there are only two of, known about? And it's in the Jedi texts. Why didn't the ancient Jedi texts? Why did the Jedi not go out and get them? And also, if their sole purpose is just to show you where Exegol is, which is where Palpatine is, what about before Palpatine was there? Did they show you? Did they show you Coruscant? When Palpatine was on Coruscant, did they show you how to get to Coruscant? That seems pretty useless because everyone already knows where Coruscant is because it's the capital of the galaxy. Ah, okay. Continuing the story, this epic adventure tracks midichlorians. Yeah. So the Resistance, featuring Rey, Poe, Finn, Chewbacca, and also C-3PO for some reason. And the actual reason is so he can say stupid one-liners, and the main characters go, "Ah, shut up, C-3PO. You're stupid and dumb. Why are you even here?" It's like literally the sole purpose of C-3PO being there is so they make fun of him. Oh wait, but he just randomly happens to have a story purpose later, but we'll get back to that. And then so they go to this planet where there's this giant festival, and it only happens every 42 years because that's the amount of time between now and A New Hope, I think. Or yeah, or like 2019 and A New Hope. I was like, okay, weird Easter egg, but okay. So they go to this festival, and some random girl runs up to Rey and is like, "Hey, what's your name?" Or no, she gives her a necklace because it's like I guess you just give people necklaces at this festival, which is like okay, that's a like pretty normal festival thing, I guess. And she's like, "What's your name?" Which is already weird because you just give someone a necklace and be like, "What's your name?" But Ray is like, "Ray," or like, and and then the girl is like, "No, your full name." And then Ray is like, "Uh, it's just Ray." And then the girl's like, "Huh," and then just like runs off. It's the weirdest scene ever. And then they turn around and go, and Finn is like, "Look out, it's the First Order." And then everyone is like, "Huh? Why are they here?" And then Poe is like, "The First Order's everywhere," which is like, what? Why are random stormtroopers just walking around this festival? Just fan service? Which part is fan service? Are you saying just like, oh yeah? Well, it also becomes a crucial part of the story once we find out that she's actually Rey Palpatine. But that we are we haven't gotten there yet in the story. All right. So they're at this festival, and the First Order just also randomly happens to be there. So Finn goes, "Look out! It's the First Order," and then they're like, I guess the the First Order like sees them or something, which is like, how did they notice these three random people in the middle of this desert festival? And they're like, "Meh, go after them," and then so they like run into this random hut, and they're like, I don't even. It's so dumb. They they're like what are we gonna do? The First Order's after us. And then this guy turns around and he's like, "The First Order is after you?" And he takes off his helmet, and it's Lando Calrissian. He's just also at the festival. And they're like, and he's like, "Hi, my name's Lando." And then Ray's like, "Yeah, we know who you are." And it's like, "No, you don't. You've never met this guy. I mean, I guess." Yes, exactly, bro. It's all just convenient stuff that just happens. Okay, so they meet Lando at this random festival, and they're like, "Lando, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Luke and I were looking for the Sith Wayfinder, but like back in the day. It's on this planet." And then that brings up a whole lot of other questions because Luke was on the island for like at least a couple years because people thought he was dead. So it's like, has Lando just been at this giant festival for like 10 years? This giant festival that, by the way, only happens every 42 years. Which, okay, so like, what's he doing there the rest of the time? Um, and they're like, "Oh, how are we going to find the Sith Wayfinder?" And then right when they say that, the stormtroopers come after them. And they're like, "Oh no, run." And they hop on, they like find these speeders somehow. And then they're zooming through the desert, and the First Order is after them. And then the jetpack guys, the jetpack stormtroopers come after them. And they have this dumb moment that I'm sure you've seen. It was highly ridiculed on the internet, where they just all go, "They fly now?" And then there's C3PO's like, "Oh, they fly now." And then everyone's like, "They fly now? They fly now." And then Poe's like, "They fly now." It's like, it is one of the dumbest interactions in all of Star Wars. Anyway, they're zooming through the desert. They're zooming through the desert, running away from these stormtroopers. And once they like, I don't even know, bro. They like hit a rock or something, and they get flung off their speeders, and they land in this quicksand, and they're like, "Oh no, not quicksand." And then also when they're falling into the quicksand, Finn is like, "Ray, I have something I wanted to tell you." And then he's like, "Oh," and then they fall through the quicksand, and it's like, "Oh no, they're all dead." How many times, dude? I've seen this once, and it's so terrible that I remember every moment of it. and they fall through. Okay, so they fall through the quicksand, and then underneath the quicksand, which makes no sense, there just happens to be a huge cave system, and it's like, and then Ray's like, "Wow, a big cave system." And then they just like start walking. Like, I bet we can get out of here. They start walking, and there's this giant worm, and it's like gonna attack them. And then Ray's like, "No, no, no! Look, it's injured." And then she heals it with the force, and then it moves away and conveniently reveals the exit to the cave. It is like Scooby Doo, bro. And then they walk out of the cave and immediately look up, and there's this cliff, and it has a ship on it. And then they look at the ship, and then Ray's like, "I know that ship." And then it flashes back to her being, uh, being left on Jakku as a child, and it's the same ship that's flying away at the beginning of Force Awakens, and it's like, oh my god. And then, oh no, wait, in the cave. Okay, before they get to the worm in the cave, just randomly, this might be the most absurd part of the entire story. Just randomly in the cave, there's a speeder, like the land speeder. It looks exactly like the land, or I think it looked. I could be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure it looked exactly like the land speeder that, like Luke and Obi-Wan ride in at the beginning of Episode 4, and it's just in the cave underneath the quicksand, and right in front of the speeder, there's just this knife on the ground, and Rey picks it up and goes, "It's a Sith dagger." And then everyone's like, "What?" And then she's like, "It must be the like clue that Lando and Luke were looking for." No, dude, I'm not even joking. It's just lying on the ground in the cave. And she's like, "It must be what Luke and Lando were looking for." And then they go and see the worm, and it just conveniently reveals the exit. And then they have this whole thing, and they see the ship, and Rey's like, and then Kylo Ren shows up, and then she has that scene from the trailer where she runs away from the TIE fighter and then jumps over it, and then Kylo Ren, literally, his TIE fighter, like, flies into a rock and blows up, just like full on like fiery explosion. And then 2 seconds later, he's just walking towards her, just perfectly fine. And then they have this like force battle. There's this ship. Okay, so it's so dumb. The ship that's on the cliff, they're like, "Oh, I guess we can use that to get off this planet." And then, oh yeah, and also the dagger has this stuff written on it in Sith, and C-3PO is like, "Oh, I know what it says. It's the coordinates to Exegol." And then, or it's the coordinates to where to stand, or it's a set of coordinates. And they're like, "Oh, cool. So just translate it." And he's like, "I can't." And they're like, "What?" And he's like, "My programming doesn't allow me to translate forbidden languages." So that's another plot point. And then Kylo Ren shows up, and then while they're like capturing this ship that's on the cliff that's apparently just been sitting there for like decades and no one has taken it, Chewbacca like walks off to look for Rey, and then immediately gets captured by stormtroopers. And then they take him into a ship, and the ship starts flying away. And while Rey is like facing off with Kylo Ren, she sees the ship flying away, and then Finn shouts across the like desert like, "Rey, they have Chewie." And then Rey goes, "No," and then grabs the ship with the Force, which is already absurd and like way more than like any Jedi can ever do in the entire series. And then Kylo Ren also is like, "No," and he also grabs the ship with the Force. And then they are both just pulling the ship down with the Force. And then Rey like starts screaming, and then a bunch of lightning comes out of her hand. And it's like, "Oh no, why would that happen?" And apparently the lightning is so strong that the ship just blows up because it got touched by lightning. And then she's like, "No, Chewie." And then Kylo Ren like leaves or something, and then she goes back to the ship, and she's like, "I can't believe Chewie's dead." And then hard cut to a First Order door opening, and Chewie walks out, No, he doesn't. He dies, and then immediately they reveal that he's not dead. It's bro, and the characters, they like, as soon as it's past that scene, it's completely forgotten that Chewie's dead. It's just fine. They're just fine. Rey just killed Chewie, and she's just fine. What even happens next? They go to they somehow they like okay, they go to this planet and they get the dagger translated because they know Poe knows this guy, or he knows this girl who knows this guy who can reprogram C3PO to be able to translate forbidden languages. And he's like, yeah, I can do it, but he's going to lose all of his memories. And then C3PO is like, guys, it's fine. It's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And they're like, surely you have a memory backup somewhere. And then C3PO is like, well, R2 backs up my memories sometimes, but also remember how he was asleep for a long time? They might be corrupt. And then they're like, okay, let's do it anyway. And then, okay, so he like plugs the thing into C3PO, and then C3PO has this whole like, let me just take one last look at my friends. And then right before they shut him off, he's like, wait, I just thought of, and then, and like, it's so dumb. And of course, as soon, like literally a split second after the final battle, when R2 is on screen, immediately C3PO's memory is just perfectly restored. He remembers everything fine. So that's another weird fake out that they did. So apparently, you know how the Death Star in Episode 6 blows up, like fully just vaporized? Apparently, that's not what happened. There's a huge chunk of the Death Star just sitting on Endor. And so they go to Endor because they got the coordinates from the Sith dagger. And then Rey, and this was never established in the story whatsoever, she reaches down to the bottom of the dagger and pulls out this like sheath blade thing, this like extra like compass piece, and it has an arrow on it. And then she holds up the dagger in front of the camera, and it perfectly lines up with the wreckage of the Death Star. And the arrow is pointing to a specific place in the wreckage. So that brings up a lot of questions. How did the maker of this ancient dagger know what the Death Star wreckage would look like? And how does Rey know? I mean, the Death Star is pretty big, right? So how does Rey know which part of the Death Star the arrow is pointing to? Or does she just assume correctly? Or like, is it just the closest part of the Death Star that the arrow is pointing to? Anyway, she follows there's this person. The Death Star's in the ocean because, of course, that makes sense. And there's this person that they meet on Endor, and she's also a what do you call it? A stormtrooper who like defected. She's a defected stormtrooper just like Finn, and she like makes friends with Finn, and it's like, oh, Finn has a new love interest. Because and another thing they did is they completely 100% just retconned Rose out of existence. Rose is in the movie, and then at the beginning, when they're first setting out on their journey, Finn is like, hey Rose, do you want to come with us? And Rose is like, no, I have important stuff to do here at the base. And then she's never seen again. Yeah, so there's a new love interest for Finn, and she's like, no, you can't cross the ocean right now because it's really stormy and dangerous. And then Rey, who has lived on a desert her entire life, goes, no, I'm fine, and just takes a ship across anyway. Perfectly fine, nothing bad happens, because of course. And then she's like climbing over the Death Star, and she gets to Palpatine's throne room from Episode 6. Hey guys, remember Palpatine's throne room? Remember when Luke fought Darth Vader in Palpatine's throne room? Here it is. And then she like I don't even remember how she finds it, but there's like up by the actual throne, there's like a secret closet off to the left, and she goes in there, and she has a evil, scary vision of evil Rey, and she's like, "What could this mean?" But then it's just gone, and she has the Sith Wayfinder, and then she turns around, and Kylo Ren is there, um, because apparently he can also sail, and also knew where the Sith Wayfinder was. And now he's there. And then they have a lightsaber battle on the Death Star wreckage. And then they have a big lightsaber battle. And they walk out onto the wreckage. And just when you think Rey is done for, Kylo Ren, you see Leia. She walks off and cuts back to the Resistance base. And Leia walks off camera and then lays down on a bed because Carrie Fisher died. So we need a way to kill Leia. And this makes sense, I guess. And then she says she uses the Force to talk to Kylo Ren. And she says, "Ben." And then Ben goes, "Huh?" And looks off to the distance. And right at that moment, Rey just stabs him right through the stomach. And he's like, "Ugh!" And then and then Leia just dies of like straining to use the Force. Yeah, she literally just gets Ben killed and then dies. Yeah, so then he's like dead, and then Rey's like, "No!" And then she drops the lightsaber and heals him with the Force. He's dead. He's like stabbed with a lightsaber, but she just goes with the Force, and then he's just fine. Because that's how the Force works now. You can just resurrect people. Yeah. Okay. And this is another problem, which is if someone just got killed and you can just heal them with the Force, what like literally the exact same thing happened to Ben just then that happened to Qui-Gon. And Qui-Gon was definitively dead. Like, he's out. He's out cold. Obi-Wan just sits over him and he's like, "Damn, can't do anything about this." But actually, he could have, because Rey Palpatine can bring people back from the dead when they're stabbed. So then Ben is fine, and Rey is like, I don't even remember. She like has the Wayfinder, so she leaves. And then Ben is like just sitting there and he's like, "What happened?" And he like stands up and he's looking off into the distance. Yeah, Rey is stronger than Obi-Wan. And then he's looking off into the distance and he hears Ben. And he turns around and it's Han Solo. Guys, remember Harrison Ford? Remember Han Solo? Here he is. You know how Ben is Han Solo's son and he killed Han Solo? Well, guess what? He's back. But actually, it's not Han Solo. It's just Ben's memory of him, and he's having a weird hallucination. And then Han Solo convinces him to be a good guy. And then Ben goes, "Oh, okay." And then throws his lightsaber into the ocean. And that's the end of that scene. And then the final dumb thing that happens in the movie, which is the climax of the movie. So first off, so they go to Exegol because they know how to get there now. And okay, so the way to Exegol is you have the Sith Wayfinder. And apparently you like plug it into your ship and it just takes you there. But actually the whole Resistance can just follow the main ship and get through this like treacherous nebula with no problem. So actually it's fine. So Rey goes to Palpatine, and okay, so there's Palpatine is like, "Yeah, I'm evil, and look at all my Star Destroyers," and then like billions of Star Destroyers erupt from the ground, and also they all have Death Star cannons on them. So each individual Star Destroyer can blow up a planet now. And okay, so they just come out of the ground because that's how that works now. And and then okay. So then it like cuts to one of the resistance people, and they were like, "All right, these Star Destroyers might be dangerous, but they have a key weakness. They need one. The like hazardous conditions of Exegol make it so they need one of the ships to have this like scanner on it, so all of the ships know which way is up. There's one ship that tells all of the other ships how to go up." So they can take off from Exegol and go destroy the galaxy. But lucky for them, the thing that Finn was trying to tell Rey before is that he's force sensitive now. Not that he loves her, but he's force sensitive now. And they're flying in, and they're like, "How do we know which ship the scanner is on?" And Finn looks around and he points at one and he goes, "That one." And his new girlfriend is like, but how do you know that? And he's like, "It's just a feeling." And then and then they like go after that ship. And they're like, I don't even remember the explanation for it, but the people on Endor were like defected stormtroopers, and they all ride horses. They're like space horses, and now they're gonna use their space horses to attack this Star Destroyer because because apparently the resistance is out of speeders, or there's like some reason they can't use speeders or just other ships to attack them. Oh no! I remember the reason. Got to go over some other stuff first though. So Rey goes up to Palpatine, and she's like, "I'm here to kill you." And then he's like, "Yes, just as planned." And she's like, "Huh?" And he's like, "You are my granddaughter." And then Rey's like, "Huh?" And then Palpatine's like, "If you kill me, my like energy will be absorbed into you, and then you will be the leader of all the Sith, even the dead ones, all the Sith throughout history. I am them." And then Rey goes, "Uh-oh, guess I can't kill you." And then, yeah, makes sense. And then Ben Solo shows up because he's not named Kylo anymore. He's Ben. And he shows up, and then he does a funny. He runs. He like doesn't take his time getting into the underground of Exegol, so he runs and he jumps onto a big chain, but he like kind of misses, so he lands on he like hits it from the side and grabs onto it, and then he goes, "Ow!" It like the music like cuts out and it like zooms in on him, and he goes, "Ow!" Okay, so anyway, Ben Solo is at Exegol now, and then Rey's confronting Palpatine, and all the big boys up in the air are fighting the Star Destroyers, and they're like, "Ah, oh, we're so outnumbered." And then Lando in the Millennium Falcon is like, "No, you're not." And then all these like trillions of ships come out of hyperspace, and they're just in the atmosphere because apparently you can just go around. You could have just gone around the nebula the entire time. So there's just like hundreds of thousands of resistance ships who are here to fight the Star Destroyers. Because, okay, so in The Last Jedi, the reason they were running away from, the reason they had that dumbass, like, slow speed space chase is because they couldn't get any help, because no one wanted to help them fight the First Order. The ship from Rebels? Yeah, apparently it is. There's like a ton of Easter eggs, apparently, that you can't see because the shot lasts for like 3 seconds, but apparently took them like years to render because there's so much stuff in it. Anyway, all these ships show up, and they're like, "Man, we're here to fight you." But then Palpatine goes, and he turns to Rey and he's like, "Watch this." And he opens the roof of his like underground lair, and he shoots lightning into the sky, and the Star Destroyers are fine. but all the rebel ships, they get electrocuted. And even though this lightning is so powerful that it can go into the sky and like hit every ship, the ships are fine. They just get electrocuted and shut down, and then they just like float through the sky. Even though when Rey like a little bit zapped a ship earlier, it just fully exploded. But anyway, we're just gonna ignore that. So Palpatine is the big evil. They pulled a Marvel, and Palpatine is the big evil laser in the sky, and he's just shooting lightning into the sky. And then Rey is like, "No, stop!" And then he like Rey or okay. Also so the Knights of Ren were like sort of reintroduced earlier in the movie, but it was so unimportant that you just like forget about it. But they're also on Exegol now, and they're like they work for Palpatine now because Kylo Ren is a good guy. But then Kylo Ren runs into the big Exegol room, and the Knights of Ren are there to stop him. In Last Jedi, they had the like Force connection. They could like sense each other through the Force and talk to each other. Well, that's still a thing in this movie, except JJ was like, "Alright, Ryan, I'll do you one better." And now, apparently, objects can just pass through the Force. So earlier in the movie, earlier in the movie, the way the First Order found them at that festival is because Kylo Ren had like one of his moments with Rey, and he was like, "Where are you?" And she's like, "I won't tell you." And then he just grabs her necklace and pulls it through the Force. And then he's like, "Get a data scan on this necklace and tell me where it's from." And the entire audience goes, "Huh?" And then he just knows where they are now. And then so Kylo Ren is there, and all the Knights of that. Okay, this is back to the final showdown. By the way, all the Knights of Ren are there to stop him. And he goes, "Uh-oh, how am I going to fight these guys without a lightsaber?" And then Rey goes, "Not to worry." And she closes her eyes and holds her lightsaber behind her head. Oh yeah, because Luke also gave her Leia's lightsaber. Or no, Leia gave her lightsaber. Somehow she got Leia's lightsaber. She like briefly goes to the island that Luke was on, by the way. And also Luke is a Force Ghost now, and also Force Ghost can grab stuff and like manipulate them now. Like she throws a lightsaber. In direct response to Rian Johnson, she tries to throw away the lightsaber because she's like, I'm done. I've seen a vision of my evil self and I'm done being a Jedi. But he's like, no, not evil. Force Ghost Luke is like, and he catches the lightsaber in midair and then walks it back to her and hands it to her, even though he's a Force Ghost. And then also he like explains how Leia was becoming a Jedi, and she was like training to become a Jedi, but then she stopped because she saw a vision of Kylo Ren's future, like her future son or something. He's just alive, yeah. Anyway, she somehow gets Leia's lightsaber, so she has two lightsabers with her when she goes to Exegol. So she takes one of them, and she closes her eyes and holds it behind her head. And then Kylo Ren has a connection with her, so he knows what's going on, and he reaches behind his head and pulls out a lightsaber, and it's the one that Rey gave him through the Force. She just teleported it to Kylo Ren, and now he has a lightsaber that he can fight the Knights of Ren with, and he takes them out in like 3 seconds, and then he runs into the room where Rey is confronting Palpatine, and then Palpatine goes, "Mwahaha," and throws Kylo Ren down a conveniently placed like bottomless pit right behind where Rey is standing with the Force. And then Rey goes, "No," and runs towards Palpatine. And then Palpatine goes, and then shocks her with lightning. And then Rey goes, and pulls out her lightsaber and deflects the lightning. And Kylo Ren, or Rey, just keeps blocking the lightning. And then Rey, like, force grabs Kylo Ren's lightsaber that he dropped. So now she has two lightsabers. And Palpatine says, "I am all the Sith." And then Rey goes, turns on the other lightsaber. Now she's blocking the lightning with two lightsabers. and she goes, "I am all the Jedi." Oh yeah, she also has this dumb scene where he like knocks her out for a sec, and she's lying on the ground, and she looks up to the sky, and she hears all these voices of the past Jedi. It's literally okay. It's literally just a black screen with like a couple stars on it. No force ghosts or anything. It's just an empty screen, and you hear the voices of the Jedi. It's one of the weirdest decisions in the entire movie. Anyway, they're like, "We are with you." And she's like, "I am all the Jedi." Who talks? A bunch of, I don't know, like Yoda, Obi-Wan, Anakin, blah, Mace Windu, all the boys. All the boys are there. Maybe Ahsoka? I'm not sure. Probably. And then she's like, yeah, probably. Yo, he's a boy. Kit Fisto's a boy. And then she's like, "I am all the Jedi." And then with her two lightsabers, starts shooting the lightning like deflects off the two. Okay, one lightsaber wasn't enough, but with two lightsabers, the lightning deflects back and starts hitting Palpatine. And he's like, and it's like, why doesn't he stop shooting lightning? That doesn't matter. He keeps shooting lightning, and it keeps being deflected back at him, and he's just melting himself with his own lightning. Bro, Kit Fisto's a G in the Clone Wars, though. He's a boy. Yeah. So then Palpatine just melts himself with his own lightning, and also Kylo Ren somehow like. Oh yeah. So the like power of the lightning deflecting off the lightsabers is like weakening Rey, and then Palpatine is dead. He's just a pile of ashes, but Rey is like, and then falls over. But right at that moment, you know the bottomless pit from before that Kylo Ren fell down? He climbed back up, apparently. So now he's just there, and he's like, "No, Rey," and he runs over, and he saves her with the Force. And then she's like, "No, I'm gonna save you with the Force now." And then Ben goes, "No, like, you are the one who saved the galaxy." And then they kiss, and it's really weird. And then Ben dies. And then they go have a big celebration, and this random person goes, "Hey, Chewie, I got something for you." And then they hand him the medal from episode 4 that the fans are like, "Why didn't Chewie get a medal?" Well, guess what, guys? Now he got his medal. Are you happy? We gave Chewie his medal. So Chewie has a medal now. And then also like, and then Finn and Poe hug each other and like, "Yeah, we beat the evil bad guys." And then there's these random two female characters who kiss because Disney is a progressive and inclusive evil corporation, even though they cut out the scene in screenings for China and Russia and like other places. But you know, they're progressive and inclusive. And also then, so they have the big celebration, and then Rey, the final scene, Rey goes to Tatooine, and you're like, why is she on Tatooine? And then she buries Luke and Leia's lightsaber at Luke's old hut on Tatooine, and you're like, how did she get there? But apparently some like old lady took her there because she knew where this random hut that had been abandoned for 40 years in the middle of the desert was. But anyway, she's at this hut, and she looks off into the distance, and the Force theme is like blaring in the background, and she looks off into the distance, and she sees Luke and Leia's Force ghost, and they're smiling at her, and they're all happy. And then the old lady is like, "So who are you anyway?" And she's like, "Rey." And then she's like, "Rey who?" Yep, there's two suns, and they're huge, and she's standing with her back to the camera, and she's silhouetted against the giant two suns. And she's like, "Who are you, Rey?" She's like, "Rey who?" And then Rey looks over to Luke and Leia, and they're smiling and nodding, and she's like, "I'm Rey Palpatine." Or no, she doesn't say that. It's what she should say, but she says, "I'm Rey Skywalker." And then the theater goes, "Huh?" And then and the movie just ends right there. Yeah, it's stupid either way. It really is. But okay, and then She's not a Skywalker, and it's called The Rise of Skywalker. But like I said, at the end of the movie, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, the only person left that we care about is a Palpatine, and we don't even care about her because she's a shit character. Wasn't wasn't the Skywalker saga great, guys? What a good ending to 40 years worth of movies. Yep, that's right. That's Rise of Skywalker. Also, another thing I forgot to mention before is the scene, the way they get out of the chase. You're definitely gonna have to watch this. The way they get out of the chase, the big ice planet from the trailers, is they like, okay, so the reason they're on the ice planet is they're getting some like secret intel from there's a mole in the First Order, and they're receiving secret intel from the mole, and then they get the intel and they fly away, but there's TIE fighters chasing them, so they like do all these crazy maneuvers, and then Poe's like, there's only one way out of this, and then the rest of them are, and then it's Poe, Finn, and BB-8 I think are the only characters. Maybe Chewie's there too, but Chewie's pointless and does nothing the entire sequel trilogy, so it's fine. And Poe's like, there's only one way out of this, and Finn's like, what's that? And then Poe's like, light speed skipping, and then Finn goes, what's light speed skipping? And then Poe's like, watch this, and he goes, and then they jump to light speed and pop out in the middle of nowhere, and they're in Cloud City, because of course they're in Cloud City, and they're like dodging all these buildings and flying all around, and then they jump again, and then they pop out in the middle of this like green planet, and there's a huge cliff in front of them, but they like narrowly dodge it, and then they like light speed skip again, they're on some other random planet, and they light speed skip again, and then they're back at the Resistance base, and they like, the Millennium Falcon is literally like flaming and falling to pieces, but they land just fine, and they're back at the Resistance base. And now you may be wondering, wait, if you can just light speed jump to anywhere at any time instantly, how come back in the how come before they had to like let the Navic computer compute the like route to different planets so they didn't crash into stuff? And also, if you're just light speed jumping to a random location, the odds of you not crashing into something are basically zero. And also, this is the most insane part, the TIE fighters follow them through their light speed jumps to all these other random planets. So then you're like, oh, that's a weird way to continue the light speed tracking thing from Last Jedi. Except this movie takes place like two or 3 years after Last Jedi. So this light speed tracking thing that the First Order had in Last Jedi, which required an entire like super Star Destroyer to be able to work. All the TIE fighters have it now. They can just track you through light speed, and they can follow you. Like, people on Reddit are like, Rise of Skywalker was bad, but it's no Last Jedi, and it's like, huh? Like there are actually people who think this is like one of the better Star Wars movies, and it's so infuriating. Like, at least it's not Last Jedi or Attack of the Clones. It's like, yeah, dude, literally Attack of the Clones, after watching Rise of Skywalker, Attack of the Clones is like a masterpiece, bro. There's a plot, there's a villain, they get captured. They like take their time with character emotions. Anakin gets all mad and he kills a bunch of sand people. They have a lightsaber battle with Dooku, and it's like slow and paced out, and Anakin gets his hand cut off, and then Yoda has to come in and save them. Oh yeah, Revenge of the Sith is pretty good, in my opinion. In conclusion, there's really just no defense for how bad Rise of Skywalker is. And I'm glad that it's the least successful movie out of the three of them, because it did not deserve to make any money.